What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and in continuing my series of Disney movie reviews, I'm here to let you know that Bedknobs and Broomsticks is no perfect movie. It takes place in World War II, where a witch named Miss Price, played by Angela Lansbury, is forced to take in three orphan siblings because it's World War II, it's the Blitz, they're evacuating children to various foster homes. If you've seen Narnia, it's pretty much the exact same thing. And the kids discover that she is a witch and want to help her use her magic to aid in the war effort. So the four of them enlist the help of Professor Brown, played by David Tomlinson, who is a con artist that had been selling her the spells that she'd been using. It turns out he never believed them because dude was a fraud and a coward. But once she demonstrates that her magic is genuinely real because of his spells, he sees dollar signs in his head and decides to go along on their journey. And I was excited to see this movie, but I had heard mixed things about it. Because, for starters, it's from the same director of Mary Poppins. You have Angela Lansbury and David Tomlinson, who both have had successful career moves by being in Disney movies. Tomlinson was in this, Mary Poppins, the first Herbie movie, Angela Lansbury, of course, in Beauty and the Beast. So I knew that there was a lot of talent and potential there, but without even reading any of the reviews, I saw on Wikipedia some taglines that basically said it has its moments, but it could have been a lot better. So I got a little worried, but I still walked in with an open mind. For the first 5 minutes, which were the opening credits, I was excited. It looked absolutely cheerful. But I gotta be completely honest, I was kind of let down by this movie. But as always, I'm gonna start off with the positives first. Angela Lansbury is just as charming and graceful in this movie as she's ever been. She's definitely the character in this movie that has the clearest character arc, where throughout her entire life, she feels as if she's had to do everything by herself. And for the most part, she's done a fine job with that. But once she's forced to take in these kids and go on this journey with a man who turns out had been lying to her the entire time, she finds that working alongside others as a team brings so much more joy to just about anything in daily life, and she starts to come out of her shell. And the same thing with David Tomlinson. He does a really good job at making this cowardly con man seem very charismatic and charming. Just like her, he also feels the need to work by himself, mostly because the stuff he does is illegal. But whereas Miss Price openly embraces just how much fun she's having with her new family, Tomlinson keeps a lot of these feelings to himself because he's afraid of getting saddled in this position of being in a family. Is he worthy to be one? And is that really a choice that he wants to make with his own life? Most of the special effects are really good too. As you would expect from the director of Mary Poppins, there are a lot of practical stunt work involving wires. Like the very first time that Miss Price tries out her broomstick, you see her take off on this broom in her house, go through a window and through the sky. Not in one take, through a variety of takes, but these takes were in real life locations, and that part just added to this awe and wonder that you get from moments like that. The big moments where she has to create this spell that will make inanimate objects come to life, which is the centerpiece of the climax, there's a combined use of wire work and puppetry that actually looks more seamless than most CG effects that you would see nowadays in most movies. I really wish that there were more practical stunt work like this, not just in Disney movies, which have become oversaturated with CG. Hell, Mary Poppins Returns features a ton of practical stunt work that I miss from movies like this. So there is still hope on that end, but just in movie making in general, practical stunt work, wire work, puppetry, those can create so many effective moments, so many effective characters, and it really does feel like it's becoming forgotten at this point. Now, that's not to say this movie doesn't have any dated special effects. Back then, they didn't have green screens, they had yellow screens, and you can definitely notice when they use those shots, like when they travel on their teleporting bed. Never thought I'd say that in one of my videos, but you know what? That's part of it. But I give that one a little bit of a pass because back then they really didn't have any options when it came down to it. And those shots, as cheap as they look, still have that Robert Rodriguez feel where it's cheap, but there's still some old school style to it. So you still feel charmed by the presence of it anyways. And like many people have pointed out, the best sequence in the entire movie is the animated bit where they're on this island called Nembab. Shit, I'm gonna look this up because I don't know how many names I've fucked up during these videos, so I'm gonna give it my best shot. Naboombu. Can you blame me for forgetting that? Now, Disney had been combining live-action actors with animated characters and backgrounds for a really long time, even at that point, so you know that it's gonna look incredibly spot on when they fuse the two together. The actors all surprisingly look and react to these environments as if they were real. They talk to the talking animals as if they were humans. That just adds to the believability of this world. The climactic soccer game during the sequence features a lot of creative slapstick involving animals. Just the whole idea of predators playing soccer against prey. That's a funny idea just by itself. They have vultures who are the paramedics. They are so excited to get out there, and they're just like, oh, false alarm? Shit. I really wanted that one. And out of all the voice actors in that sequence, because there's only like 2 or 3, I'm also going to have to look this name up. Lenny Weinrib as the king. He's a voice actor who's done a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. As the short-tempered king of this world, he has a really deep but still loud voice that really suits the character, switching from a constant rage to just relishing in the joy of abusing your authority on all of your subjects. He was easily one of the funniest parts on that bit. There aren't enough funny villains, funny angry villains like this in Disney movies that you really get very often. I know some people like the Red Queen, some people like Captain Hook. I prefer Captain Hook more because he has that cowardly side to him, but I don't know, this guy just felt unique for whatever reason. Now you might be thinking, it sure sounds like there's a lot going for Bedknobs and Broomsticks, and there absolutely is. The problem is the pacing with the movie. It feels like it goes on forever. It's almost 2 hours. It did not need to be, because there are so many scenes that feel really repetitive with what the subject of each scene is. There are so many repetitive moments where Miss Price is constantly struggling with the fact that Professor Brown is a con artist. She seems surprised every time he never remembers his own bullshit because he didn't believe any of it to begin with. It's weird how long it takes for her to accept the fact that he was a con artist this whole time. It only takes the kids like a few seconds. More on that later. I get it, he lied to you, but at the same time, your magic worked in a weird way, in a really strange way. You got exactly what you paid for. The comedic bits that also get a lot of focus are really one note. There are only 2 basic spells that are played up for laughs, because that's the other problem. On a side note, Miss Price is an amateur witch at best. She only knows a few spells, and most of them she has to look up in her book just to say the words, which I'd be fine with that as a story element. Like, getting a ton of spells wrong over and over again can lead to some really creative visuals, some funny slapstick, but what usually happens, there's only 2 scenarios every time she messes up. Either she turns someone into a rabbit temporarily, because chances are Disney can only afford 1 rabbit on set, or an inanimate object hits them in the face. That's really all there is to the magic. It felt more like a plot convenience as opposed to an actual character flaw. But back on topic, there's more time spent on those elements than on what I felt could have been a really strong component of the story. The kids in this movie, these kids that Miss Price has to take in involuntarily, but over time, she's supposed to build a strong bond with them. They're supposed to build a strong bond with David Tomlinson. And for starters, they don't really have that much in terms of personality. The one sister in the family, I don't even remember her name, let alone what her personality was. I guess she was the most mature, but they don't really do anything with that. The oldest son is at first supposed to be like the rebellious kid who doesn't believe in magic because he's 11 going on 12. And then he's supposed to be like more sucked in with the magic as time goes by, but he never even remotely seems fazed by it. At least I only can remember 1 or 2 times off the cuff where he really seemed happy or surprised that something happened, but those scenes last for like a couple seconds at best. The only kid I felt really added that much to the story was the youngest kid, Polly. And it's a typical trope where the youngest is the one that nobody listens to because he's the youngest, but over time he continuously points out all the clues because he's looking everywhere. He's not looking in specific places or spots for clues. He's looking everywhere. And that curiosity is what helps them discover where these spells are, how they can activate them, and of course they start listening to him more as time goes by. It's an old-fashioned trope, but because he's the most fleshed out kid in this movie, it felt the most earned. And some people might be asking, well, why does it matter so much that the kids are relevant? Most kid actors aren't even all that good. And I agree on some of those, but for starters, watching Disney movies through the perspective of a kid can add a lot to the entertainment value. When you watch a kid see something impossible happen right before their eyes, they look shocked, they looked amazed, they looked so happy that the things that were just imagination are all of a sudden real to them. Watching those moments, you can feel as if you're experiencing that awe and wonder with them. And you know what? I'm probably gonna get some crap for enjoying Mary Poppins Returns a lot once I review it, but that was one of the reasons that made that movie great. The kids were shocked. They were amazed by all the magic that was happening. And it looked like they were having fun with all of the characters. I know Lin-Manuel Miranda wasn't the most fleshed out character in that movie, but he took kids on an adventure with Mary Poppins. He had a blast along with them. He got them to express themselves more openly. You don't get that with the kids and these two parent-like figures that they receive during Bedknobs and Broomsticks. And because these kids are essential to Miss Price and Professor Brown coming out of their shells, you're supposed to feel a bond between all of them, and I honestly didn't, because they don't ever take a time to breathe, to get to know one another. I don't really have a ton to say about the songs, because I only remember a couple of them. The first one, Old Home Guard, which had a really nice marching beat to it, kind of like Colonel Hoffy's March from the Jungle Book, or Portobello Road, because that is a catchy title, and it does have a good dance number where so many cultures are sharing their own identity with each other, and that part was nice to see, but the dance routines themselves, like the rest of the movie, just felt like they went on for far too long. And the other songs, I don't really remember, other than the fact that they established the atmospheres that they're in as opposed to the story and the characters, and because I thought the story and the characters weren't all that fleshed out anyways, it really didn't help me with that much. I know Disney has a lot of pointless songs, and pointless songs that are entertaining, especially by the Sherman Brothers, but those movies had more character depth, at least for me personally, than here. I haven't even gotten to the fact that the villains, the Nazis, the ones that make World War II a really crucial time in history, they don't show up until the last half hour of the movie. And it made me realize that's why there's no urgency to the story. That's why it felt like everything was drawn out too long. There never really felt like there was a conflict or really any rush, because it takes place in 1940 at the beginning of the war. And without spoiling anything, the ending does kind of show that sometimes aiding the war effort takes years as opposed to one typical moment. That one typical moment being a fun climax with the inanimate objects kicking Nazi ass. That part was fun, but it's easy to make that part fun because the Nazis are the villains. Bedknobs and Broomsticks has its occasional magical moments, but it focuses so much on the things that are really repetitive and one note, and less time on the things that would have made it more interesting, like the bond between this surrogate family. At least, that was how I felt. I know that there are a decent amount of people who really like this movie, and I can completely understand why. On a technical level, it's pretty close to matching Mary Poppins, but I don't think it had anywhere near the level of story depth, character depth, or really that many entertaining songs. And for all those reasons, I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to give Bedknobs and Broomsticks a 2.5 out of 5. I was right about one thing. After Pete's Dragon, it can't get any worse than this. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Bedknobs and Broomsticks, let me know down below what you thought of it. And side note, on Saturday night at 7 o'clock, I'm going to be making my podcast debut on Sharp Edges Cinematics, the Joshcast with my buddy Josh Goffman. He is an usher at a movie theater that I love to go to. You're going to see us talking for quite a long time about some of our favorite directors and other things because we get off topic really quickly. But yeah, my podcast debut, I'm really looking forward to that. I'll put the link to Sharp Edge Cinematics somewhere around here. You'll see it. It really doesn't matter. But yeah, be sure to check it out Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Be sure to stay tuned for the last few Disney reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.